Greetings, citizens. Hey you beautiful, curious human being. You, welcome to my channel and welcome to today's drunk mystery episode. I'm so happy we could meet like this. I'm so happy that somehow in all of this craziness today, you and I were able to find each other on this crazy planet that we call home. My name is Brittany or Bratterstein, whichever you prefer, and today we're going to be discussing the mysterious death of award-winning actress Natalie Wood. But before we get started, if you have not yet had the pleasure, please make sure to join the Brat Pack by subscribing and ringing that bell, because I put out a new video every single week, sometimes more than one, and I would love to hang out with you. Yes, you, specifically you, but I can only do that if you join the Brat Pack and become one of us. One of us. One of us. One of us. And you can also follow me on Instagram and Twitter if you want. They're both Bratterstein, but no pressure. Now, as I stated, in today's Drunk Mystery episode, we're going to be discussing the tragic death of Hollywood starlet Miss Natalie Wood. On November 29th, 1981, Natalie Wood's body was found floating in the Pacific Ocean just off of California's Catalina Island. Her death was ruled as being initially an accidental drowning, but many people to this day do not believe that that is the case because of several factors. One, the incredibly flawed investigation, the ever-changing stories and inconsistencies of the accountings of that night by the witnesses on board. Two of these witnesses being high-powered, famous actors, to Natalie's deep-seated, debilitating fear of dark waters, and to the just numerous instances throughout Natalie's life that seem to foreshadow her tragic death. Many questions are left unanswered in this case, and what truly happened to Natalie Wood that night is a mystery that still captivates numerous people to this day. And that was 40 years ago, is that right? Yeah, 40 years ago. So today, I'm going to be telling you all the details about this mystery, and while I do, I'm going to have me a little drink here, hence the drunk in Drunk Mystery. Now, if you're certain that's not your thing, to each their own. Thank you for staying this long, but if you're like, that sounds a little weird, I don't know how I feel, maybe stick around. You may be surprised to find that I'm kind of a good time there, bubby. With all of that said, let's discuss the life and the mysterious death of the beautiful Natalie Wood. Natalie Wood was born Natalia Zakarenko on July 20th, 1938, making her a Cancer, a water sign. Water. Natalie was one of three daughters. I'll explain. Natalie, and her sister Svetlana, who later changed her name to Lana Wood because she was an actress as well. Well, they were both born to parents Nikolai and Maria, but Maria did have another daughter from a previous marriage named Olga. So together, a family made five. Both of Natalie's parents had been Russian immigrants who had came over to America during the Russian Civil War because they were like, no thank you, I'm gonna go over to America and try to build a better life. And they were very set, particularly Maria, on making sure this happened. They were like, we're gonna start from the bottom and now we're gonna be here and I'm gonna do whatever it takes to make that happen. So Maria, growing up, apparently Maria, Natalie's mom, she really wanted to be either a ballet dancer or an actress, but she wasn't really able to fulfill any of those dreams. I think she tried a little bit, but it just really wasn't her calling. So once she had Natalie, she looked at Natalie and she's like, listen, you look like a actress. So I'm gonna nurture that dream that you don't have, but that I have. So I'm gonna make sure that maybe you do that because that would be tight. So she started to sort of push Natalie in the direction of pursuing the ambitions that Maria had that she was never able to bring to fruition. Which isn't cool, Maria. Let her see if she likes it. She was like a baby, just a little baby. In addition to Maria just always wanting her daughter to like live out her dreams, Maria was also like a hella superstitious woman, right? So one day she met with a fortune teller, and this fortune teller was like looking in the crystal ball, and she's like, listen, I don't know if she had a crystal ball. That probably isn't accurate. Palm reading, whatever she did. She looked at her and she's like, you're gonna have a daughter and she's going to be a great beauty who is known worldwide, which Natalie Wood was those things. So Maria heard this information. She was like, that is tight. That's exactly what I want. Thank you. You're telling me exactly what I want to hear here. But the fortune teller also gave Maria a warning to heed. She told her, "Beware of dark waters, because I see someone in your future dying in dark waters." Now, when we know what happened to Natalie, that makes this statement and this warning all the more mysterious. Now, because of this warning, Maria, terrified of dark water, reasonably so, but she passed this phobia, onto her daughters, and Natalie was so afraid of water that she never even learned how to swim in her entire life. So, because Maria really wanted to make sure that little Miss Natalie, she wanted to make sure that she was going to be a famous actress, right? So she would take her constantly to the movie theater. She'd plop her on her lap, she'd tell her to watch the screen, and she'd be like, "Take some mental notes, kid, because we are poor, so we can't afford acting lessons, so you need to watch what they're doing, take it in, and do what they do." And she also told her, which I thought was really weird, that, okay, the Paramount newsreel, you know how they like point a camera and it looks like it's pointing at like you? Well, she told Natalie Wood. She told Natalie that this camera was pointing at her specifically, so Natalie would sit in her lap and she would like pose and smile. She'd do a little Vogue, little baby Vogue as one does, you know what I mean? Because she thought that she was being filmed. And Natalie later said in her life of this that she thought that she was going to be rich and famous. It was getting in her head from that time that she was going to be an actress. She was famous. They were all watching her. And Maria, you know, nurtured this. She would even get into the habit of always taking Natalie to like movie studios or places where movies were being filmed. Just kind of walk around with her, let her look at everything, and let people hopefully see her. And I mean, Maria was kind of right, because she was successful in her pursuit, because when Natalie was just 4 years old, she had taken her over to a movie set in Santa Rosa, I believe is where it was. And she was like parading her around, getting her to look at people, getting people to look at her. And she even, she had gotten her 4-year-old daughter into the habit of going up and climbing in directors' laps. Okay, just gonna drink this. Either way, it was on this movie set that little Natalie Wood was discovered, and the path to success was being made. That's a good sentence, I think. So Maria, as I'm sure you can imagine, was fucking stoked, dude. She was like, hell yeah, this is happening. And she actually moved her family from Northern California to Los Angeles. And Nikolai, Natalie's dad, was like, listen, Maria, I'm not too stoked about this, but see, the thing is Maria's fame boner was stronger. So the family went and they moved down to LA, and Natasha effectively changed her name to Natalie Wood after a couple of like studio executives told Maria like maybe this would be a better thing to do. I guess at the time there was like a famous director named Sam Wood. I did not look into him. If you're a movie person and I am committing a mortal sin by not knowing who he is, I apologize, but they were like, oh, Sam Wood, like he's a famous director, your name will be Natalie Wood, and somehow that will, translate into you being cast in more roles, because science. So Natalie got her first actual like movie gig when it was just weeks before her 5th birthday, which like that is an actual baby. Child labor laws, I don't know. I know child actors exist. I don't know how I feel about it though, but I guess we need people to play children, but either way, she was very, very young. She was on screen in this movie, I think it was called Happy Land, and she was only on screen for about 30 seconds, but somehow this little kid had the charisma of 1,000 suns, and she ended up catching the attention of another director, a man named Irving, and it's either Pichel, Pikel sounds better to me. Irving Pikel. And after that, this guy ended up a friend of the family for years and years and years, and he would always call Maria and let her know if there were any parts coming up that he thought Natalie would be a good fit for. So he was very good for Natalie's career to have Mr. Pikel as a friend. So Natalie ended up getting a couple of other roles in her younger years, but her like big one, the notable one, was she got a part in the movie A Miracle on 34th Street. Have you heard of it? And from that, her career skyrocketed. She was doing very well, but though this is a good thing, right, I guess, if that's what your goal was, it wasn't easy on little young baby Natalie, right? She's like a little kid. This is a lot for a kid to handle. She's getting famous. She's not getting a real childhood. And though her mother, Maria, should have been the person to comfort her and love her and make her feel like just be that safety net, her mom pretty much did everything she could to make it a lot worse emotionally, physically, mentally for her young daughter. Okay, let me give you an example of what an asshole Maria was. So, on the set while she was filming one of her movies, little Natalie found that she needed to cry on cue for this part, and she was not able to do this because she was, say it with me, an actual baby with no formal training. So she's like, oh, I can't do this, and there was danger of her not being able to have the part. So Maria, her mother, called her over. Come here, darling, my little baby. And instead of like loving her and telling her it's cool, like if you don't know how to do this, you don't know how to do this, you are a baby, just try your hardest, she, pulled out a butterfly. And this sounds crazy, like, okay, why was there a butterfly? On one account I saw that it was just like a random butterfly in a jar that was on set because reasons. And in another accounting I saw she had brought a butterfly with her in a jar, apparently anticipating this exact moment and the need for a live butterfly. Either way, Maria was like, I know exactly what to do to make you cry, sweet daughter. She took the butterfly out of the jar. I almost think this story is a fucking lie, because when I'm hearing this, I'm like, that butterfly would be bobbing and weaving. I don't see how she's just gonna catch it. She pulls it out and she rips it apart in front of her young daughter. Just plops the wings right off that butterfly, and then it's like, oh, now that you're crying, go get to fucking work. It's rude. It's real rude, Maria. If that's real, and that's true. It's reported everywhere, so I guess it is. I don't know. I just don't understand the logistics of a frantic butterfly, but I don't know. In another instant, and this one is so frustrating, and like, okay, so Natalie was in a movie, right? And she was set to cross a bridge, and like, it was like a rainy day. I saw the scene, rain, 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 bridge, rushing water under it. And the bridge was set to collapse once she was on the other side, right? So that she'd be safe. It'd be like, oh no, it almost happened, but she's fine. Maria told her, because she was scared, she's like, Mom, water, the fortune teller, I don't want to do this. And her mom was like, oh, don't worry, the bridge isn't going to collapse. They're going to put that in after, post effects, no problem. So she went and did it. And whoever was pulling the lever pulled it early, and she ended up falling in the water. So her mom lied to her to get her to do it. She ended up falling in the water and lost her fucking mind because she's terrified of drowning. She doesn't know how to swim. She's like panicking. In the process of trying to save herself, she broke her wrist. Okay, she finally gets saved out of the water. She tells her mom, like, Ma, my fucking wrist, like I hurt. And her mom said, tough it up, chica, get back to work, and sent her back on the set to finish it because she didn't want her daughter to be problematic and not be able to work. Never took her to get any medical attention. Broken wrist, so it never set right. And I guess she had some sort of scar. There was something wrong with it, and throughout her adult life, she always wore a bracelet to cover it. To cover her physical and emotional scars, you know? Fuck. That makes me super mad. Like, just don't have kids if you're gonna be an asshole to them. Like, it's really not that hard. Birth control, adoption, there's options, okay? But, you know, sounds like Natalie was like a cash cow, so it's just, it's messed up, man. So as Natalie got older, her mother didn't really get any better, right? So her mom would encourage Natalie to go out there and like rub elbows and like bat your eyes at older men in Hollywood, actors, directors, anyone who could help advance her career. She'd be like, go out there and make some friends, you know, see if he wants to get a cocktail, whatever. And there's a long list of these men, but on this list is Frank Sinatra, man. A man who was many, many, many years older than the teenage Natalie Wood. And her mom encouraging her to hang out with these men, sometimes alone, go to parties without her, just a teenage girl with all these grown-ass men, put her in a vulnerable position to being hurt and or used by these men. And this did allegedly happen to young Natalie. When she was only 16 years old, she told friends, family, people who she could confide in, that she had been raped by a, and I quote, powerful married movie star. Now, I'm not going to tell you who this allegedly was, but a quick Google search will bring up someone that you will recognize, most likely, unless you are a youth, because I know I have some youths that subscribe to this channel. He was important at a time, okay? Her mother allegedly knew and did nothing. She thought it was like a great thing. She knew that Natalie had to do what she had to do to get ahead. And this woman was just like such a piece of work, man. Like, okay, Natalie had a boyfriend all through high school. A guy that she was really into, a guy that she met while she was in high school. I think it was at Van Nuys High. They were just like all smitten for each other. And once they were, you know, a little bit older, he proposed to her. And she told her mother, and her mother was like, Natalie, what can this man do for you? And like made her give the ring back. Told her to call it off and break it off. And Natalie did. And she always did what her mom said. At least to a point. That's so messed up, man. Not even being able to like pick your own dudes. Like, you need to cycle through them, man. So many of them are a bummer, but she wasn't able to do that. And it's illustrated further by Natalie's first husband, actually. So in to the story comes Robert Wagner, and we're going to hear a lot about Robert Wagner later, so buckle in for that one. So when Natalie was 18 years old, the studio that she was signed with, worked with, set her up on a date with actor Robert Wagner. At this time, Robert Wagner was known as like a heartthrob in Hollywood. He wasn't as famous as Natalie, but he was like clean cut. He was like a nice American boy, tall, blah, blah, blah. And they were like, this is perfect. We'll set you two up. Natalie was like a well-established actress, very well respected. And they thought that this would garner a little bit of publicity by putting the two together, as one does in Hollywood, I guess. So though Natalie wasn't the one to set this date up, she was all for it because Robert Wagner was not a stranger to her. Okay, so apparently Natalie had first encountered Robert Wagner when she was just 10 years old. Apparently, she was 10 years old. She's walking down the hallway at 20th Century Fox when her and Robert Wagner walked past each other. She was 10 and he was 18. A Hollywood love story, okay? Fuck. Anyway, they walked past each other. They locked eyes. He kept walking because she's 10, but she looked up at her mother and was like, one day I will marry him. And apparently, like, this was her dude. This was her, Jonathan Taylor Thomas, and she had like photos of him on her wall. Like, this was her guy. So when the two got set up, she was like, hell yeah. I mean, he was 8 years older than her, but when you are adults, that is a more appropriate age gap. So the two went on the date and it was like fine. She was like, sure, that was a great time, but she wasn't really looking to like settle down, even though, you know, he was like the type of guy to settle down with. So she was still dating around a bit, but Robert, he was all about her, and he was always kind of like calling her, trying to stay in her, you know, her orbit, if you will. And eventually he ended up asking her out a couple of months later on a date, like an independent date, not for publicity, just the two of them, hang out, max and relax, chill, not kill. And that date went really well. And within a year, the two ended up being engaged when he like took a little pearl and diamond engagement ring and put it in her champagne, and she drank it and tried not to choke. And the two ended up married. Now, I know it's been a bit since I added some of the mystery, so we're about to add some mystery up in this bitch because this is a very mysteriously foreshadowed and creepy deepy case, I promise. Hold on. Natalie's mother, good old Maria, when hearing Natalie's good news of her engagement to Hollywood heartthrob Robert Wagner, who was a person who Maria would be all about, she was fine with her daughter dating any man that would be good for her career. Robert Wagner seems like he would have been that. Well, she said to her daughter, and I quote, "No good will come of this. It will be trouble." Now, that could be considered ominous, right? Because, I mean, no good did come of this, and it was very much trouble. But there was also a rumor going around at that time that, like, Robert Wagner may have been on, you know, well, we're all on the spectrum with our sexuality, but he might have been, you know, a little towards, he was known, allegedly, to also like men. Liked women, liked men. Totally fine. At the time, men were super closeted about it, though, so her mom might have been talking about that. Or she might have been channeling that fortune teller and knowing that shit was going to go down if she married this guy. It's just one of those statements that in hindsight can be a bit eerie. Okay, guys, don't mind me. I'm just trying to remember what I said last because the claws, which there are no laws with, have started to hit my brain. I can't remember what I said last. The two newlyweds honeymooned on their yacht. They had a yacht, apparently, and there was a horrible, horrible storm that made it really terrifying and nearly impossible to be on the water. Robert himself describes the water in the boat as pitching like a wild horse, and this was the worst storm the area had seen in 15 years. And this was on their honeymoon. Now maybe this is just plain old bad weather, or maybe it's foreshadowing of a very mysterious water death. I don't know, you tell me. The two seemed happy at first. They would go on road trips, but you know, road trips as if that's like the mark of being happy. It kind of is, actually, if you think about it. Being in a car long term with someone, that's a way to test a friendship or relationship for sure, because people can be annoying. Anyways, the two also had their fair share of troubles and ended up divorcing after only 4 years. Now, why did they divorce? That is up for debate. There were many rumors running around in the media, and also because this was just like the it couple. They were the ones, like, if they couldn't make it work, no one could make it work. They were America's sweethearts. And there were rumors in the media that Natalie had been unfaithful, but Natalie had told friends and family that it was actually Robert who had been unfaithful, and that she had caught him in bed with another man. Who really knows, though? No one, except for the people who were there. But the rumor that Natalie had been unfaithful was that she had actually been having an affair with her co-star, Warren Beatty, who was at the time hot. And, you know, there maybe is a bit to that, because after her and Robert separated, she did end up dating Warren Beatty. Robert later in life admitted that he had become so jealous of Natalie Wood, his wife's on-screen relationship with Warren Beatty. Okay, he was so convinced something was happening that he had driven to Warren Beatty's house, and he had sat outside his house with a gun intent on killing him. Now, he didn't kill him, but that's a dark mind, no? That's a dark mind. Anyways, though, there were also the rumors about Robert, and we knew from earlier that Natalie knew going into the relationship that there was a possibility that he also liked men. So I feel like either of those things could be true. I don't really know. A little column A, a little column B. Her dating Warren right after makes me go like, maybe there was something going on before. But I think she came out in an interview saying that she just needed somebody after her divorce, and Warren was just kind of like there and kind of hot, but he was just kind of like that hot boy for her, not really somebody she wanted to be serious with. I don't know. You let me know what you think, because there were also reports that neighbors who lived next to Natalie and Robert when they were married said that they constantly fought, and that Natalie would be screaming, like terrified of Robert, and saying that that he was going to kill her. So either way, the two separated, and Natalie never spoke publicly about why they separated. She just let the rumors turn out their rumors and just kept silent about the whole thing. So what do you think? Oh my god. The two then went on. They both remarried. They both had kids with other people. They were just like doing the damn thing independent of one another. But Natalie said that the two never stopped loving each other. So when her second marriage ended and she found out that Robert was back on the market, she was like, what up though, boy? And she ended up accepting an invitation from him to visit his Palm Springs home. And with that, the two rekindled their relationship, her just saying kind of like he had grown as a person and had gone from a boy to a full-blown man. Whatever the fuck that means. I mean, I know what it means, but whatever the fuck that means. Natalie did seem to have some less than favorable feelings, intuition, if you will, about the man that she loved, the man that she was rekindling her romance with, because when she went to tell her family her good news that, hey, I know I divorced Robert and I married this guy and then divorced this guy, but now I'm gonna remarry Robert though because I love him. Her sister was like, why? Okay? And this is what Natalie had to say. Sometimes it's better to be with the devil you know than the devil you don't. That's a statement that we could just unpack big time. I have an idea of what I think. What do you think she meant by that? What do you think she meant by that? Let me know down below. So at this time that the two got back together, Natalie's career had slowed down a little bit. she had decided that she was a mother now. She wanted to focus on being the good mother that her mother never was to her. So she had started turning down some like pretty big roles, things that she probably wanted to do, things that would have been difficult for her to turn down, but she knew what her priorities were and what was important to her at this point in her life. So Natalie, she was slowing it down, and the two, they each had a daughter. I believe they each had daughters from their previous marriages, and then together they welcomed yet another daughter into the world. So they had just like a big Brady Bunch mixed family right now. Not like Brady Bunch proportions, but you know what I mean, a mixed bag of family, and that just sounds like drama to me, but either way, they were good. And at this point, Robert's career was starting to take off. He was the more actively successful one in the family, and he no longer had to live in his incredibly successful, wonderful, beautiful wife's shadow. So he was like, I love that. Because men's egos are so fragile sometimes, right? If you're a man, am I wrong? But am I wrong? Again, we're speaking in absolutes, which we have to do in order to even have a conversation, because there's always exceptions. But if we want to have a debate, we have to be able to speak in a little bit of absolutes, right? Is this the White Claw talk? Because again, there are no laws with the claws. So shortly before the duo remarried, they're engaged at this point, they decide they're going to go on a cruise together. And while on this cruise, there's another notably aggressive, horrible storm while they're out on the water, just like had happened on their honeymoon. Despite all of Natalie's fear of the water and all the storms that she and Robert had encountered, both metaphorically within their relationship and physically with actual storms on the water, when Natalie and Robert remarried, they remarried on the water, and shortly thereafter, Natalie and him started looking for a boat. They wanted to buy a boat together, which, okay, given their history of being married on boats, honeymooning on boats, just vacationing on boats, I get that this is like a cute thing for a couple to do. It's something me and my husband would do if we had like dollar bills, y'all. But in hindsight, it makes it like, oh, everything's just looked at a little differently after a tragedy. And Natalie, despite being afraid of water so much, she was just like going for it, man. She was of the mind that like, you can't fight fate, bro, you know? No fate but what you make. So the two ended up finding their dream boat, and when they got it, they named it as people who own boats do, and they named it the Splendor. And they named it the Splendor. Am I saying Splendor? Splendor. Splendor. And they named it the Splendor after the movie Splendor in the what the they named this boat after the movie that Natalie starred in, Splendor in the Grass. And I just thought of something. Splendor in the Grass was the movie that Natalie Wood starred in with Warren Beatty. And now I'm just wondering if there's something to that name choice. Was it like a little jab at Natalie for her possible affair? What is there's something there that I can't quite put my nose on. Do you guys know what I'm saying here? To name the boat you buy together after the movie that your wife starred in with a man that you were so jealous of that you sat outside his house planning to murder. Help a girl out here. So now we're moving to that fateful night of that boat trip, the Thanksgiving weekend boat trip that claimed Natalie Wood's life. Supposedly, this was an accidental drowning. But this is a very controversial ruling, and many people do not believe that Natalie Wood's tragic death was an accident at all, and therein lies the mystery, alongside all the foreshadowing throughout her life that I've already told you about. Speaking of foreshadowing, when Natalie and Robert were about to leave on that boat, getting ready to leave their children, Natalie's daughter, I believe it was her daughter from her other marriage, she was very nervous about her mom going on the boat that day. She said in hindsight that she just had a really weird feeling. She wasn't sure if she was just being a child who didn't want her mother to leave, or if there was something more to it, but she knows that she just felt uneasy about the trip and she did not want her mother to go. Natalie boarded the Splendor, the boat with the interesting name, the Friday after Thanksgiving, for a weekend trip alongside the captain of the boat, which was a good friend of hers, her husband, Robert Wagner, and her friend and co-star, Christopher Walken. Yes, hey, forget about it, I'm Christopher Walken. I'm done. Now, if you're like, Christopher Walken, that's weird. What's the backstory there? I'm gonna give you a little bit of that information right now because it actually does pertain to what happened. So as I said, Natalie wasn't taking as many movie jobs as she had been before. I think I read that she had only taken 2 in like a decade. But of these movies, one was a movie called Brainstorm, where she starred alongside a young Christopher Walken. And during the filming of these movies, as often happens that we see in Hollywood when like 2 attractive actors start to work together, and I know you're thinking, Christopher Walken, an attractive actor? You're picturing like click Christopher Walken, right? Just Google young Christopher Walken and you'll have a better understanding of what I mean when I say attractive. Okay. So rumors started to circulate because of the intimate friendship and the bond that the 2 had created with one another in filming and movie together, working together long term. People thought the 2 were having an affair. Naturally. These rumors made their way all the way to the ears of one Robert Wagner, a man with a little bit of a jealousy problem, a man whose jealousy problem drove him all the way to parking outside of Warren Beatty's home to murder him. Okay, and this man who was prone to anger and jealousy had apparently started drinking more, which can just exacerbate those things. So when Natalie knew that her husband was nervous about the friendship, she was just like, nah, dog. Like, there's nothing going on. We're just close friends. And she started even kind of like bringing Christopher Walken around to be like, look, see how we're just friends? Look how we interact with each other. And just try to like ease his mind by hanging out with Christopher Walken. So when that Thanksgiving weekend came along and Christopher Walken was going to be alone in a hotel room because he was away from his family filming a movie, Natalie decided, let's invite good old Chris onto the yacht. We'll all hang out, have a good little Thanksgiving getaway so he's not alone by himself. And I guess they invited another friend as well, but this friend declined. So it ended up just being the 3 of them. So with that, the 3 plus the captain boarded the Splendor with their sails set to go to Catalina Island. And apparently almost immediately there was a little bit of a tension in the room that you could cut with a knife. And it seemed to be coming from Robert Wagner and was directed towards Christopher Walken. And part of this is, he already had some jealousy in him, supposedly. And the fact that everyone, except for the captain, I certainly hope, had been drinking. Natalie and Robert were both known to sort of, be able to put back a few. And Christopher Walken had a drink here or there as well. And I mean, same. The boat made it to Catalina Island and they docked the boat, the Splendor, at a little city called Avalon. And this is a little area where they could get out, they could walk around, they could have some drinks, they could have some food, just enjoy the nightlife. They went shopping, and while there, they had several more drinks, as one does on vacation. There's no judgment there. When I was in Hawaii, I had a Mai Tai or a pina colada with every meal of every day I was there, including breakfast. And there's no shame up in this game because you're on vacation and that doesn't count. Anyways, they did that. They got a little drunk and they headed back to the Splendor at about 10 p.m. Once the trio returned to the boat, it seems that the weather had taken a turn. The waves were high, the water was aggressive, so there was talk of either moving the boat or maybe going back to land and staying in a hotel. Natalie was terrified. She was afraid of water her entire life, and this was a bit much for her. In addition to this, Christopher Walken was starting to feel nauseated because in addition to being drunk and maybe having the spins, he was on the ocean that was like doing the damn thing, so he was probably straight up not having a good time. Now, it's reported differently depending on which witness you talk to in this case. This discussion about moving the boat was also described as an argument that may have been about moving the boat, but it may have also been about Natalie flirting with her friend Christopher Walken. Either way, Natalie got a little fed up and she left the boat to go stay in a hotel on land. But she did not leave with her husband Robert. She actually left with the captain, and the 2 of them went back to get a hotel on land. Because apparently the 2 were very good friends. So the 2 head back to the island, and once they get there, they go back to a bar and they have more drinks, and apparently they were pretty heavily intoxicated according to the people who were there that saw them. They then went to a hotel. They paid for 2 rooms, but the 2 of them stayed together in one room. According to him, nothing hinky happened. They just hung out, and she vented and vented and vented angrily about her frustrations in her relationship. Apparently, she was telling him that she was over it. She was over Robert. She wanted a divorce. So this could be an indicator of how bad that argument actually was, or it could be an indicator of an alcohol-fueled anger that got more out of hand than it needed to, and maybe that could have been resolved the next day. You know those fights where you're already a little mad and then you drink and then you're so mad and everything seems so much worse than it is. Who knows which one of those things it was. While back at the island, apparently Natalie also expressed that not only did she want to leave Robert in general, she also just wanted to leave Catalina Island. She didn't want to be there anymore. She was asking people who were there at businesses they were at, like, when's the next boat out of here? When can I go home? I don't want to be here anymore. And it's sad because if she had just gotten to leave, this wouldn't have happened, probably, at least not in this way. And she ended up talking to the cap, and he was like, there's no way out right now. Maybe we should just chill it off. Let's sleep this off, see how you feel tomorrow, and go back and see if things have blown over now that everybody is sober, all that jazz. The two headed back the next morning, and once they got there, everything was fine. It was like nothing had ever happened. They all hung out and chatted. They ate some breakfast. They were just chilling, and they decided that they were going to move the boat to a more secluded area of Catalina Island and just try to salvage their weekend and have a good time. So once they got to the area they were going to stay in, it was a place called Two Harbors, which was like a much smaller, much more secluded area. Natalie and Christopher Walken were like, we're going to go have a good time, deuces. And they got in the little boat that's attached to the big boat, the dinghy, if you will, and they headed in to land to go to a bar/restaurant and just like max and relax. And shortly thereafter, Robert and the captain, they also went into land. I don't know how they got there. Maybe did they have two dinghies? I don't know how they got there, but they did. And they went and they met up with Natalie and Christopher Walken at the bar. Apparently while there, everybody else is just having a good time, laughing, slow motion, drinking, clapping. You've seen it in movies. And while everyone else is having fun, it seems like Robert has a lot of anger and a lot of tension, but this time it's not directed at Christopher Walken, it's directed at his wife, Natalie. Had to pause and get another claw. Watermelon this time. So, as the four return to the Splendor, okay? And by this time, just for your information, they are hammered drunk, okay? They get back on and they decide, hey, let's keep this party going, and they have some more drinks. And this is when things got a bit heated. They're all talking, and the conversation between Robert Wagner and Christopher Walken gets a little, heated. They start sort of discussing Natalie's career, and Robert is kind of being a dick, like, well, she's not going to act anymore, she's not going to do this, she's not going to do that, she's a wife and she's a mother now, this is her job. Christopher Walken was kind of like, hey man, like, she's an actress, this is her job. Which, like, that's a good friend, that's what you should do as a friend, but also I could see how this would upset a man like Robert Wagner, who already wasn't like the biggest fan of Christopher Walken. Oh, hi, Bows. Oh, hi. So Robert's response was the response of a totally reasonable, level-headed man, and he took a wine bottle, and he smashed it on the table, and he said, what are you trying to do, fuck my wife? If you're listening with headphones, I am so sorry. In response, Christopher Walken was like, I'm gonna go get some air, and he walked outside to do his thing. Then he ended up going to bed, and Natalie was like, you know, I can't take this anymore, and she went to bed as well. Robert did recall this conversation initially a little bit differently. He said that they weren't talking about Natalie's career, they were talking about politics, and that little Natalie, you know, politics, women, no. So she was like, this is boring, I'm going to bed. But later he did admit to saying this and breaking the bottle and, oh, you're trying to fuck my wife. He admitted to all of that. So that's just another one of the inconsistencies / straight up lies that have been told by the witnesses in this crime. Apparently Robert sat there and kind of simmered a little bit before getting up and following Natalie downstairs to their room. And he says he was just going down to tell her goodnight, like she hadn't come up to say goodnight. So he was going to go tell her goodnight. But the captain says that after a couple minutes, a fight broke out downstairs. Which to me, a fight breaking out sounds a lot more reasonable than him just going to say goodnight and nothing happening. Because, let me just say, if I was hanging out with a friend of mine and my husband was like, fuck my wife, we would have words to say because that's completely unacceptable behavior, embarrassing, rude. My husband would never because he's an earth angel, but if he did, or if I was with somebody else who did, a fight would be had because words would be said. You know what I mean? Like there would be an argument about that. So Cap was like, listen, the captain, I'm calling him Cap now because we're friends. The captain was like, oh, this isn't really my business. So he went out on the deck and he tried to get away from the noise to let them sort of fight it out. Natalie and Robert fought, and the fight ended up moving from the bedroom to the deck of the boat, where it continued, and then all of a sudden just stopped. The noise just completely stopped. There was no splash, there was no nothing, just silence. This was at about midnight, and so Cap like kind of waited a little bit, Cap kind of let them do their thing, waited a little bit. Once he realizes that like the fight was done, he went to go find them, see how things were. This is where he found Robert alone, standing on the deck, and he was like, Natalie's gone, and so is the little dinghy, the little boat next to the boat. They were both just gone. But did Robert panic when he realized his wife wasn't on the boat anywhere in any of the rooms? When he realized that when he remembered rather that she was terrified of water, and that by deductive reasoning, she's gone, the dinghy's gone, she's out in the water alone in the dark. Did he turn the spotlight and look for her? Did he call the Coast Guard? None of those things happened. No, he sat down with Cap and they had a couple drinks, and Cap says that he wanted to call the Coast Guard and he wanted to turn the light and look for her, but that he was afraid of Robert. He was afraid of what Robert was capable of. And he says that after a little bit of time, he even suggested this, like, maybe we should look for her. Maybe we should call the Coast Guard. But Robert was like, no. We don't want to make a big deal out of this. Sit down and have a drink, sir. So over an hour after Natalie went missing, Robert finally was like, fine, we'll call somebody. So he put a little radio thing, announcement over the radio that somebody was missing off his boat. And a man ended up responding to this, and from this, a small group of people got together to search for Natalie, and they ended up going back to the island to search for her because Robert had a theory that that might be where she was. But when they got there, they found that she wasn't there, plus everything, all of the businesses there, I'm sorry, he's so cute. All of the businesses there were closed, so there was nowhere for her to go over there anyway. So somebody, being worried, finally got a hold of Harbor Patrol, which is like less than the Coast Guard, I believe, like a step down. And one of the members from Harbor Patrol came on over to the Splendor, and they got on the boat to kind of like talk to people. When they got on the boat, they found that everyone was just chilling, sitting there, drinking. Like maybe this is the time you stop drinking because of like your missing wife / missing friend. I mean, maybe they should, but I shan't. When Natalie still couldn't be found and nothing was coming of their searches, they decided that now it was time to call the Coast Guard. Let's bring in the real serious authorities into this mess. And Robert was like, no. She's a high-profile actress. We don't want this to get out. We don't want this to be a bigger deal than it has to be. But they were like, at this point, like, it sucks to suck, but we're going to call somebody, bro. 6 hours after Natalie went missing, the Coast Guard was finally called. They brought in divers and searchers and all that jazz. And they did end up finding the dinghy, the little boat that she had taken, or that Robert thought that she had taken off the main boat, but it was abandoned. Shortly thereafter, at about 8 a.m. on November 29th, 1981, 43-year-old Natalie Wood's body was found floating face down in the Pacific Ocean. She was floating about a mile from where the Splendor was located. She was in a nightgown, socks, and her red jacket. And her body was identified by the captain, not by Robert. He just couldn't bring himself to do it, you know. It's, I mean, if he had nothing to do with it, I get it. Like, that would suck. If he had nothing to do with it. You know what's super fucked? Besides, like, all of the normal things that are just so messed up about this case, I got some more information for you. One of the boats who had been, you know, parked, docked, hanging out in the water near the Splendor. Well, they heard something ominous that night. That night, they heard a woman in the water crying for help, splashing, yelling, begging for help. But they couldn't see her anywhere. They could just hear her, and they couldn't determine where exactly her voice was coming from, because, you know, the water sound bounces or splashing. They couldn't tell where it was coming from, so they even tried calling Harbor Patrol several times, but never got an answer. So people heard her, dude. People on a neighboring boat heard her crying and begging for help, and no one helped her. And with that, Natalie's death was deemed an accidental drowning, and I'm curious, what do you think? But before you make a final determination, I got a couple more things to tell you that I would like you to factor in. I would like you to keep in mind that this story is coming from the individuals who are witnesses that were on the boat, okay? This is their story of what happened. But I would like you to keep in mind that these men, when they were questioned, and they were barely questioned, okay? Before they were questioned, Robert Wagner was like, hey, can you guys give us, investigators, give us a couple minutes to talk amongst ourselves before you interview us? And the police were like, yeah, totally cool. Barely an inconvenience. You go do that. So they gave them a couple minutes alone. And for what? Why did you need those minutes if not to discuss what you were going to say to police? That seems very odd to me. And in addition, Robert lied, right? Like, he was caught in several lies. Initially, when police saw the broken wine bottle, Robert told police that it happened because the waters were super rough and it just like fell over. But then later he admitted that he had smashed it and admitted to being like, are you trying to nail my wife, to Christopher Walken? So that is a lie. Lie detector determined, Robert Wagner, that was a lie. And apparently Natalie had some cuts and some bruises onto her body that were then attributed to her falling in the water and trying to like aggressively get back onto the boat or to get onto the little dinghy, which we're going to get into what they think happened specifically. And maybe these bruises and cuts could be attributed to that, her struggling trying to get back out of the water. But if that was the case, wouldn't one of the guys on her boat have hurt her? Especially if one of the neighboring boats hurt her? And if that was the case, couldn't they have helped her? Like if the neighboring boat hurt her, how is it possible that not Robert or Christopher Walken or Cap hurt her? And there's also a theory that the bruises didn't come from that day, but that they had actually, because of how long bruising takes to show up on the body, that they had actually been on her body prior to her even going into the water. And if that's the case, that opens up a whole new like jar of worms, bottle of worms, can of worms, fishing, water, full circle. We got this. So the theory was as follows. Natalie Wood had been sleeping in her bed when she started to hear the little dinghy smacking against the side of the Splendor. And she was like, fuck this noise, I'm trying to sleep, bro. So she gets up, she walks out, she's like, I'm gonna retie this dinghy because it's bothering me. So she goes to do that, somehow slips, falls into the water, panics, tries to climb back in, slams herself all around, gets bruises on her body and her head and everything, is unable to be saved, drowns, no one hears her, no one can help her. Okay, let's say for a second that we believe that Natalie Wood's death was an accident and that she fell into the water, okay? And that somehow nobody heard the noise except the neighboring boats. The reasoning behind it seems sort of dumb. No, I feel like it's much more likely, based on what we've heard here, that she was fighting with Robert. This is in the scenario that this was an accident. She's fighting with Robert. She wants to get away from him because F this. I'm tired of you blaming me and accusing me of F'ing my friends. So she says F this. She gets in the little dinghy and she heads back to the island to get a hotel to stay in like she had done the night before. But this also doesn't really make that much sense to me because if that was the case and that's what happened, why wouldn't she have asked the cap to go with her again? This woman was terrified of dark water. She was so afraid of the water that even in her adult life, she never learned to swim. And swimming is awesome. And she gave that up because she was terrified. Now listen. I know that drinking alcohol can make you kind of brave. I know that. I am the most phobic person that I know. Like, I'm afraid of everything. That's just how I rock and how I roll. Okay? And when I drink, I do get a little bit braver. But I don't get so brave that I get in a tiny little dinghy and head off into the night, into the pitch black night, on the waters that I'm terrified of my entire life are going to kill me. I'm not that brave. Okay, we're gonna add another layer of what the fuck to this case. So after the crime was committed, it was ruled an accident, everyone went along with their lives, living their lives. Cap ended up moving into Robert's mansion. He was just living in the mansion alongside Robert, and Robert even hired him an attorney and told him not to say anything to anyone. Now this opens up like a million more doors, like so many doors in my mind, bro. Like, okay, so was Robert bribing him to not say anything by taking him from like rags to riches? Letting him live in his fancy mansion and like have access to his pool and be able to max and relax and not have to pay any bills? Apparently, according to Cap, there was like a security guard who was there who would never let him leave. Like he was forced to stay there and never leave. But Robert says this isn't true, that the guard was there to protect them from anyone who would come into the house. It all seems a little weird to me, to be honest. Like, I don't know what to make of that. It seems very odd. And Cap didn't come out till years later, actually, to say that he really believed that Robert had something to do with Natalie's death. He was always kind of like spitting the same narrative before that. And then once he was out from under Robert's thumb, supposedly, he decided he wanted to tell the truth. But it just seems, I don't know. I want to know more about what happened in that house. Because also I'm thinking, like, could they have, I feel like I need to know more about Cap, because I wonder if they could have been in some sort of relationship. And that has something to do with something that's never been, like an avenue that's never been searched or looked into. I don't know. Let me know what you think. It just opens so many doors in my head because it makes no sense and I don't understand that. The whole thing's super weird to me. And I never even mentioned to you guys that in the wake of Natalie's death, Robert is the one who got like most of her money and most of her assets. So I guess after some time, police started to think that all of this stuff was suspicious as well, because in 2018 they actually named Robert a person of interest. Not a suspect, just a person of interest. And they also changed Natalie's death. They classified it as suspicious. And police wanted to speak to Robert because now that they had fresh eyes looking at it, they said that that his account of what happened that night didn't really line up with the evidence that they had. The LA Coroner's Office also changed Natalie's manner of death, which is different from cause, manner of death from accidental drowning to drowning and other undetermined factors. The investigators now are wondering the same thing I've always kind of wondered, which was, did Natalie maybe fall into the water and it was known that she was in the water and someone just chose not to help her? Or is it possible that she either fell or was shoved or thrown in the water and she hit her head and was unconscious and unable to help herself? That would account for the bruise they found on her head. Or is it possible that somebody caused the bruise on her head and then she was placed into the water already unconscious? Investigators want to know, but those who may or may not have more information refuse to talk to police. They refuse to divulge what they may or may not know. Robert won't talk about it. Christopher Walken won't say a thing. And that makes me so mad because, like, low key, high key, for sure, all the keys makes me mad because, like, I want to like Christopher Walken. As a kid, before I knew all of this, I did. I thought he was like an American treasure, but this makes me mad. It makes me mad that he might know something and is not saying it. Like, tell us what you know, bro. He doesn't say nothing about it. And if there's nothing to hide, why wouldn't you talk about it? I don't understand. But it makes me so mad at Christopher Walken. The only person who was there that night that's talking is Cap, and Cap thinks that Robert had something to do with Natalie's death, and so does Natalie's sister. These unanswered questions, silence from the witnesses, inconsistencies in the stories, and just overall shady behavior is exactly why, to this day, the death of Natalie Wood remains a mystery to many. But anyways, guys, that completes this video. I hope you enjoyed. Did you like it? Did you like it? Are you liking the new series? Please let a girl know. And man, Natalie Wood, what do you think happened? I don't know. I don't know where I land for sure, if I'm honest. I don't know if I think it was an intentional murder. I know for sure that I don't think she went out there to try to tie up that boat and then fell in. I don't think that makes any sense. That story just seems kind of dumb to me. I do think it's possible that maybe she was trying to get in that boat to get away from Robert because she was just so tired of his bullshit, and that she fell in and that he just didn't help her and walked away. I think that's possible. Maybe in the argument she was shoved into the water and nobody helped her. Maybe when she fell or was shoved, she hit her head and then went unconscious into the water. But I don't think she was unconscious. I think she was conscious in the water because the neighboring boat hurt her. And if the neighboring boat hurt her, then so should have Robert and Christopher Walken and Cap. And if that was the case, someone should have saved her. Either way, someone should have hurt her or helped her, accident or not, and they did not. And that is my opinion. What is yours? Anyways, I hope you guys had fun. I had fun. I'm liking these videos. I think it's a good time. Plus I'm a little bit day drunk, and these were delicious. And now I gotta edit this bitch. Woo! Let me know how you feel though. As I said, this is very, very new and I'm kind of feeling it out and seeing what you think. I have a schedule in mind, but it's gonna depend on your reception to the series. So let me know what you think down below. If you haven't joined the Brat Pack yet, please make sure to do so by subscribing and ringing the bell, because I put out new videos every single week and I'd love to hang out with you. And of course, let me know of any mysteries you would like to see me cover down below. You can also check the description box for any of my social media handles if you would like to hang out more consistently. Everything is linked down there for your pleasure. And of course, make sure to tune in Mondays, because every Monday I do a morbid makeup video where I tell you a true crime case while putting on a face of makeup, and it is pretty all right. People seem to like it, and I think you will as well. And anyways, guys, that's it. This has been tight. You are tight. Stay creepy and stay curious, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye.